We said it before and we'll say it again. We are the ones we've been waiting for. The Love Us campaign allows us to show up for one another. Together, we can fund the healing revolution collectively, one donation at a time. We are proud to have covered the cost of over $6 million in therapy sessions since 2019. But with the demand of our services skyrocketing, we need to do more. As we embark on our 4th year of making mental health resources accessible, we're placing our faith and optimism in our community by setting a bold impact goal. From now until December, we are rallying 1 million supporters to contribute just $5 each. If we succeed, we'll significantly expand our reach and provide $5 billion in therapy to Black women, girls, and non-binary folks in 2025. This campaign is about Black women pulling our resources together to build a grassroots, for us, by us movement. Join the Love Us campaign. Visit the lovelandfoundation.org to join our movement of 1 million by making a $5 donation today. Joél Leon, also known as Joél L. Daniels, is a Bronx-born girl dad, author, and storyteller who writes and tells stories for Black people. His work has been featured in New York Times, People, the Boston Globe, ABC News, TED, Ebony, OK Player, Pop Sugar, The Root, Newsweek, Forbes, and many others. He's a New York City creative class alumni and the winner of the BCA Bronx Recognizes His Own Award in Poetry, and author of the Hope Macmillan essay collection Everything and Nothing at Once, a Black man's reimagined soundtrack for the future. It's out now. Joel's rep by Folio Literary. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Unfolding presented by the Loveland Foundation. I'm your host, Rachel Keener, and today we are joined by Joél Leon. Hi, Joel. How you doing? Oh.
Hope and power. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Star Trek for life.
I can never get it right. This is the best I got.
Gang sign.
Oh, no, never mind. Take it back. Non-affiliated, I promise. So welcome. How are you doing? But how are you feeling? How are you feeling right now?
Ooh, boy. Blessed, tired, alive.
Yeah.
And real, I mean, you can interchange, it's interchangeable, but like fortunate, we're really fortunate.
Yes, Maxwell.
Life has been really good to me.
That's beautiful. No, I don't know if you know this, but you are our first male guest on this podcast ever.
Wow. I mean, I was the man at the brunch.
I mean, I was going to tell a whole story time and let them know like what got us here at this point, but
I'm breaking ceiling.
Let them know. So, as you guys know, if you're listening, Loveland Foundation is dedicated to showing up for women, non-binary folks, Black women. And so, while it is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, we want to show a light on our brothers who are on their mental health journeys. And one thing I remember about you, particularly Joel, is last year in April for the mental health brunch we did in New York. I had just started working at the foundation. I was probably like 3 weeks in. This is my first time in New York, first time doing to like a work event where I had to be like talking to people and meeting my team and stuff like that. And nervous, like, is an understatement. I literally also brought my mom with me on that trip and didn't tell anybody. And she was in the restaurant, like on like a stealth mission. So she was just like knew how scared I was. Stop being in New York.
Nuts.
I was like, Mom, don't say anything, okay? Just like look at me and I'll let you know when you can leave. But I remember you were the first person I met and immediately felt this like sense of like ease and calm when I started talking to you. And I remember our conversation was about how we both love a sweet drink. And it really just made me feel so like so calm and like so unguarded and like able to just like ease into this like brunch. And I will forever be grateful for that moment, for that conversation, because it really like allowed me to be in that space and like fully be present. And just want to say thank you. And I was like, one day I'm going to find a way to work with him and bring him back on. And like full circle moment. And like, what timing is it? Because you just have a book came out.
Yep.
You let him power the book, let him like, flex on him for a second.
Everything and Nothing at Once, Black Man's Reimagined Soundtrack for the Future, is currently in stores wherever you purchase your books, shop at bookshop, you know, head to Ohio if you want to go grab a book. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Rachel store, like wherever. Listen,
research.
yeah, you know what I'm saying. We outside. I was just I'm just really proud of the body of work. It is about helping us all to really unpack and dismantle the patriarchy, but also really too just hopefully being able to give Black men language,
Yeah.
also give us collectively the language required to not only just show up for Black men, but also to show up for each other. You know, I wrote the book for Black men, but it is really a book for all of us. I'm proud of the work. I'm proud of the work, and the reception has just been nothing short of magical. It's been really a lot of love, a lot of love, a lot of support. It's been beautiful to bear witness to.
No, you are a very, 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 very gifted storyteller. And it's so like reading it and listening to it, I truly felt like, oh, like I feel like I know you. And then in the book, you're like, don't make this thing like you know me. We're not friends like that. And I'm like, what's up? Heard. But it just really is amazing because mental health isn't something that's often talked about in many communities, especially Black communities, and especially the Black male community. And even when I was like going through it, I was thinking about how my own like stigma towards like Black men, towards like feeling like, oh, they just don't talk about their emotions and just accepting that
Mhm.
as what it is, but not really unpacking the why and
Mhm.
like the leaning into it. Like I don't have a lot of men in my life. The only man in my life was my dad. And like thinking about how he came up and how he expressed his emotions, how he definitely could like find ways to bottle them in. And like we just kind of just like, well, okay, you know, like he just keeps to himself. He's just introverted. But like we all have these deep feelings. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wish I could have shared this book with him because I feel like he would have deeply loved it and would have really like,
That means so much. Please tell him I love him.
yeah.
You know, it's something I've been talking about a bit more recently. Well, that's not true. I talk about this often, but it's a thing that's come up more often. The idea of context.
Mm,
You know, when we're meeting people, we have to be cognizant of the context in which we're meeting them, their history, the lives that they lived prior to them walking into the room, because all of that comes in with them.
yeah.
So you know, when we throw out labels like they don't feel they lack emotion, they're not emotional, and it's like even that them being stoic, them being quiet, like that too is in and of itself, I think part of what we don't even get to see that they're processing or
Yeah.
they're not processing. That's still an act, right? Of something. And so I think part of the work is like, okay, how do we show up for them in that way? And sometimes it's just creating the space. But
Yeah.
it's hard to do that when we're not getting something right on the other side of that. But I think it's easier to do that when we can recognize that they're coming from a thing. You know what I'm saying? Like they weren't always this way. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like our parents were children,
Mm,
right? They were somebody's lover. They were somebody's friend, might still be. And so if we're not holding space for their multitudes in very in a similar way, like, you know, listen, Kimberly Crenshaw gave us the blueprint for intersectionality for a reason. And I think when we talk about intersectionality, what often gets lost in that conversation are Black men, you
yeah.
know, because, and like also too, when I'm thinking about the intersections, I'm not just thinking about gender and race. I'm thinking about age. I'm thinking about class. I'm also thinking about culture. You know,
Mhm.
if you meet a black man from Mississippi is probably going to be raised a bit differently than a black man such as myself, raised in the Bronx. All those things actually matter. You know, and when was I born? I was born in '83. I'm assuming your father was probably born a little bit earlier than me. It's gonna like it was a very different experience growing up as a black man in certain eras, and so we have to hold space for that. It doesn't mean we allow harm to happen,
Yeah.
but it does mean that it adds a bit more context to how we hold them accountable in the space we can offer them. You know.
That's beautiful. And I think about that often about like the layers of intersectionality. And I think about how what it takes to like get through the day, basically. And
Yeah.
like all the obstacles you face of like just trying to go home or trying to like make it through like a job or make it through
Mhm.
like in a relationship, how to show up as like your best self. And like even like as a parent, like all it takes for you to be your best and like while continuously working on yourself and continuously working on the things that like maybe the obstacles, but also just like the triumphs sometimes and how you celebrate those wins. Like also like how to experience joy and how to experience love as well. Cause I think we're taught to not like be too like excited or like to like hold in. I think is like the thing I notice a lot about Black men is like they just hold in so much. I'm like, you could be happy. Like you like it was funny because yesterday I was with my family who was visiting from Texas, and there's this little boy, my cousin, he's like 8 or 9. He was like trying to play with me, and I was like, if you want a hug, you could just say that, you know? And like my guy was like giving me a hug. He was like, and like it was like I knew that's what he wanted, but like he couldn't express that, you know, and just having that moment of like you have a permission to be soft, and that's okay, you know. And there's so much
Yeah.
strength in that, and you speak to that in your book. And I really loved like hearing you break down from your perspective, like the power of softness, because like we all love like a soft life, an easeful life, but like what does that look like in practice? And
Yeah.
how do we get that? And so, how do you practice living or like aiming to have like a soft life or being a soft person and like seeing that as power and not as like a weakness?
Well, I mean, I think some of that too is, I mean, not for nothing that the responsibility falls on all of us as a community. Like we can't require people to be soft and us not soften around them.
Mm,
I think sometimes we're waiting for other people to make the first move. Like I'm not going to, and I understand why, like, especially if there's been a harmful dynamic.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, I've been more successful being soft. Honestly, I've just gotten more accomplished in my life by being more vulnerable, by being more honest. Um, because I mean, the opposite wasn't actually helping. It didn't feel
Mm,
like it was helping me, or maybe it did on the surface because I was opting into this idea of what masculinity was supposed to look like, feel like, and be like. And I got to a point where I needed to get off the hamster wheel. You know what I'm saying? I cheated on my then partner at the time. We were engaged. You know what I'm saying? The prerequisite for us to get back together was for me to go to therapy. I wound up cheating again, very lame of me. And also we broke up, and then like I was really forced to sit with a lot. And it forced me to grow up. I mean, the fatherhood forced me to grow up. And I would rather it not take some sort of like event, life-changing event for us to find our footing and our grounding. But sometimes it does, but for me, softness, yes, is very much a practice. It's very much a practice. And what I've realized, going back to the statement I made earlier, by me softening and by me being vulnerable, I know it opens up the space for other Black men to feel like they can. And some it takes longer than others. You know what I'm saying? Some of us, the indoctrination is a bit stronger. There's a lot more language ingrained in us to not be soft. It's also hard to soften around Black men when you might feel like you're threatened, right? There's all these things, but it's like chicken or the egg. Like, is the threat coming because you are soft, or the threat coming because you aren't?
mm,
It's hard to say. Hard
yeah.
to say in certain instances, but because we worry about being taken advantage of, and I'm sure I have been in certain instances. But if I'm gonna love, if I'm gonna be genuine in love, then I have to be soft as well. If I say I want love in the pure sense of the word, then I also have to soften all the edges around. And that's work. But it's worthwhile work if you want love in your life, I think.
Mm. I think you'd speak on how a lot of times we just want to be like seen and heard and loved, and
Yeah.
like what that takes, like seeing people and hearing people and also loving people. So it is a two-way street, and sometimes it's not even like just two people involved. It's like a whole community of people, and like creating that community that like brings a good foundation for that in the first place. But no, did you have the intention of becoming this mental health advocate? Like, was that like you're like no, like
It's even why I struggle when people like put me in the wellness category. I dislike it. I'm
yeah.
a writer. I'm an artist. Like I'm a poet. I'm a rapper. I'm all these other things. I mean, I wear the badge proudly because it was just me really being aware of my own stuff
Mhm.
and wanting to write about it, share it. Also wanting to be an advocate for others. I worked in the nonprofit and social services sector for a number of years,
Yeah.
9 to be exact. And so a lot of my background was in learned environments and like understanding DSM-4 diagnoses and working with individuals who are suffering from those, and understanding the psychotropic medications. Like my background, my work experience primarily was through the lens of not just the mental health conversation, but also too like medical care and healthcare advocacy for a number of years before I made the pivot full time into like marketing, advertising work. But people don't even, I mean, a majority of folks don't know my like story outside of the creative portions of it. But so much of that understanding of the mental health community and what needs to happen and where the gaps are was because I was in the space. I was in the field.
No, it
I was,
shows like just like, oh, he's tapped in. Like he
yeah,
knows.
yeah, like, conducting home visits, case notes, assessments, reassessments on clients, going to Rikers Island like once or twice a month to talk to
Mhm.
folks about services, talking with folks who are on the other side of that, who are receiving services about what was working, what wasn't, what psychotropic medications they were taking and they weren't, dealing with their psychiatrists and, what I'm saying, their medical professionals. All these things like gave me an understanding. So too, that when I was having my own suicidal ideations and I called the suicide hotline, I knew who to call. I also knew what would need to happen if I was going to check myself into the psych ward, because that's where I was at that moment in time when I
Mhm.
called, and like what was gonna, all these things. Like it not to say it prepared me for certain moments, but there's a level of awareness that I know I have in the space that the common person probably doesn't. Um, but it was just me telling my story and telling my truth. Like when I started writing about that, I was writing that for me. I was writing stories about my own mental health journey, really for myself, and also too just to make sure that by the time Lila, my firstborn, came around, I really exercised all the demons that I was concerned about that might have had an effect on her. But that work started. The work started with the big breakup, and then it continued. It really continued and started manifesting itself when I found out I was going to be a father,
Mhm.
and for the first time, and knowing, okay, this is real serious damage control.
Yeah.
I gotta be good. Like I might not have the money right now. I might not have all these other things. I know I have love, but I need my mental health to be stable for this
Yeah.
person.
Showing up as like the best version of yourself for your daughter and
Absolutely.
being that person.
Yeah.
And I'm sure because not many people are able to do that self-reflection, do that work on themselves and like have the resources to do that or even know to do that, especially when bringing children into this world and like talking about like generational like traumas and cycles and like what we want to carry into like the next generation. Like you have to be really mindful of that, like how
Yeah.
you speak to your children, like also like how you speak to yourself around your children. Like
Yeah.
they're paying attention and they're paying attention to like what we're doing and like so it's real and it's very like empowering to see. So shout out to you for that. So in a lot of your works, like you share very like personal stories about like your life. Like you mentioned, like suicide ideation, like being in those dark moments. Like when you're doing these stories, I know you say you're doing it for yourself, but like how do you find that balance of being vulnerable, but also like privacy, but also just like trying to make sure that like you are protecting your heart and like like how does that come into work and like how when like writing this book were you able to get through those feelings if you even felt them?
No, no, no. That's a fair. I think I'm a pretty open book, and I also think too so many of these stories I'm so far removed from,
Mm.
so the wound doesn't feel as sharp.
Yeah.
It's allowed me the opportunity to really be introspective without hurting myself in the process. But I don't really think about it through the lens of privacy unless there's another person included in the story. Then that's a different conversation. But when it comes to me, it's no holds bar. I don't really, I, I'm not precious about any of the stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's stuff. I wouldn't even call it my stuff. You know what I'm saying? Buddhism has taught me anything. What I'm saying? Like our thoughts aren't our thoughts. You know what I'm saying? All these things, like they're things, they happen. We've processed them, but I don't need to own them per se.
Yeah.
They've happened to me, yes, but they don't have ownership over my life. And so that's been the thing for me. Granted, I know it's not that easy for a lot of other people, but for me, it's been very much like a practice too. I'm sure it's hard for me to remember a time when I wasn't this way.
Mm.
And like, granted, vulnerable on a page, like vulnerable in real life is a different story, but vulnerable on the page and like speaking my truth on paper, that's kind of always been the case, and like and operating in that way.
How do you practice vulnerability through the lens of like self-love and self-care? Like, and what other things
Radical,
do you use?
okay, radical loving honesty. Like
Mm.
I think our most honest self is our most vulnerable self,
Yeah.
and like that is scary for a lot of us. It's not scary for me anymore. I don't really get scared about being open and being honest and being vulnerable about things. I was kind of speaking to this earlier. The more vulnerable I've been, the more love I've felt. I've been supported in my vulnerability. And I know, granted, not everyone has that kind of community, unfortunately. I'm sure there are brothers who want to be vulnerable and find it hard to because the men around them and the women around them are just not creating space. Or what'll happen is maybe you weren't vulnerable and there's a shift. Now you're trying and then folks clown you for it. Or you're being called soft in a way that is not seen as a compliment. And so that will easily force a person to retract, to go inside, as opposed to being, I think, what is again the most honest and truest version of ourselves, which is the most vulnerable. And so for me, the care is the vulnerability. It is this is how I'm feeling. I didn't like this. I did like this. We're not really taught that it's okay for Black men to have boundaries around that. You know what I'm saying? And like really being able to clearly communicate what you're feeling, what you're seeing, what you're sensing, because we too have intuition.
Yeah.
Intuition is not just a womanly trait. It's not a gendered ability. It's like a thing that is learned and harnessed and nurtured. And we're not taught to do that as Black men, but we have it. Like if you know any Black man that's walked into it, and I'll tell this to my nephew, my Justin's like 23. And I'd be like, bro, that feeling you get when you go into a room when you feel like nervous or you're like, yo, it feels like something's going to pop off. That's your intuition, bro. It's not, you know what I'm saying? It's not unique. It's not a unique gendered experience. And so, the self-care for me is really just about being honest across the board with the people I love, friends, lovers, colleagues, whomever, about what I'm processing and what I'm feeling.
Do you think that like vulnerability is like a contagious thing sometimes? Like, do you find yourself around people, especially men, who aren't necessarily most vulnerable, and like you're like, oh, like let me show you the way. Like that could be.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say show him the way, but absolutely. But you are correct, and I think in even asking that question, now, yeah, it's like the same way love is contagious. Enough of a big thing, of a good thing, of a freeing thing is gonna make at least people curious about it.
Yeah.
I think there's been times when I've probably been in rooms with people who have been like, "How did he get this?" And that's not even a brag on myself. It's just I'm cognizant of how I show up in the world, and sometimes that can be disarming for people if you're not used to a vulnerable Black man, who's like gonna hug you, who's gonna love on you, who also comes from where I come from, and I'm gonna be honest about like, yo, you did the way you said this hurt my feelings, or the way you did this didn't feel aligned with who you are and who what you mean to me. Like there's this thing where like it's almost as if we can't hold Black men hold other people accountable for harm.
Yeah.
Or if we can do that, then it's also questioned because we're not generally seen as the vanguards of our own experience. Like because we don't have the language or you don't have the tools. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the other side of that rings true, right? I know consistently there's been a history of just us as Black men who cause harm in the community, especially for our LGBTQIA plus folks. I think for me, what I've seen though happen more often than not is when a person, think of Jesus, you know what I'm saying? It's like the idea of walking like him, there's only but so much he was gonna tell you. And so I think vulnerability or any of those feelings and emotions that are big and meaningful to us, I think very much are can be a part of a contagion. You see one person doing it, then it sparks something, I think, in us to get at least a bit more curious about why,
I love the curiosity of it. You talk a lot about like your love of language in general. Yeah. And it's very apparent because you speak in a way that like you love the words and like you love, like you express things in such a way that's like, so it feels so like raw because it's like, oh, like that's exactly how I feel in the way you say it and the way you like it's typed. It's like it feels seen. And like I've always admired people who could make words work like that because like it's just never come natural to me. But music is such a big part of this book of yours. So like for funsies, like what is a song that's like really speaking to how you're feeling right now and like conveys language to you in a way? That's like really
Song, that's a good question. Song
awesome.
that's
Just looking for song recommendations too for my playlist.
Yeah. I'll just say, listen, I put it together. I'm gonna have to cheat. Let me look at my phone real quick.
Oh, I found the track list on Spotify too. So
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Let me see. I'm gonna look in my real quick. I'm looking at my light. I mean, okay. I mean, I don't even know if this is really the right answer, but
what is the right answer?
it's something that it's something I've been. They brought it to Spotify, and it's Jadakiss performing "Who Shot You" live
Mm.
from the verses that the Locks and Dipset did about what 2 years ago.
Oh, like the one in peak versus era, like
Yeah, the peak verses era. Like I forget where they did that verses at, but like he had a freestyle on the Biggie's "Who Shot You" beat, and they did that live, and it's just like I remember watching it happen like on my phone, like the moment when he did it, um, and it gave me goosebumps. It was just like a really important moment in like hip hop, and so that song has kind of been on repeat while I've been on book tour because it kind of just gets me amped up. Like,
yeah,
on
hype
stage.
song.
I'm a yes. Not like exactly like
Just like that. I thought that was
yes.
Jason right now.
Yeah.
Jake in the room with us, like
You know. But there's something about, I mean, again, we talk about music, hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Hip hop is like the foundation for all things art and culture and love to me. So, but that's the thing that I've been like, it's been on repeat repeatedly. Like I'm listening to it in the Uber or the Lyft, wherever. You know what I'm saying? With
you on
bumping,
Ox playing that song is
yeah. It's like one more time. You know what I mean? Just get myself right for what felt like a really pivotal moment. Have been a few pivotal moments, you know.
And attaching songs to those moments to hold those memories is always a beautiful thing to do.
Yeah, you know, like part of the reason why I even made a playlist for the book tour was like, you know, when I was in Reparations Club, shout out to Reparations Club in LA.
Oh, I love
Beautiful.
that part. I love the
Love them
yellow.
so much. But, you know, playing the playlist overhead and people coming to me like, yo, like who did the soundtrack? And me being like, you know, but it's like heavy East Coast influence, there's some West Coast stuff. And I wasn't even trying to do that. It was just like, what are the things that I want to hear? And what are the sounds that I would want to hear if people were going to be in the room with me?
Yeah.
You know, and it was just me paying homage to music, you know?
No, it definitely sets the tone and sets the vibe of it. And even in your audiobook, I didn't know audiobooks are able to play music and like have like such a
They are.
I kept checking. I was like, "Is this the right thing? Like, am I listening to like?"
I wanted to create an experience for folks. I
You
mean,
did.
like I do, you know, I do a number of different things. You know what I'm saying? And I wanted to like I was like, if I'm gonna do if this is my only and last book, I wanted to make it incredibly special. I mean, it's special already, but it was like, okay, we're gonna score this. And I wanted to do more music on the audiobook, if I'm completely honest with you. I didn't think it through enough. Like I'd known that I was going to do a soundtrack. Like I was going to record an album for the book. That it was different than us scoring the actual audiobook with like songs. Cause like even the songs in the audiobook are not going to be on this project that's coming out on Juneteenth. Like those songs are from previous projects. And part of that, well, except for the intro. The intro is a new creation between myself and my good friend Arthur Lewis. But it was me trying to create a soundscape, you know, and also maybe like, yeah, I want a Grammy. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, the audiobook category is a unique and special one. And so I just wanted to, you know, just play around and have fun with like the creative process of all of this, you know?
Oh, and I think it just shows how like it seems that the vulnerability keeps coming in because like music, you know, people are like, oh, let me see your playlist. You're like, no, like absolutely not. Like that's just for me. But like the vulnerability, like here's the things that like speak to my heart or like what is like tied to like my experience. And then also bringing people into that vibe and bringing people into like a part of your soul that only music can really like speak to, you know, and then you're able to pair that with your book, like each chapter being connected to a song or to a moment and like having that. So like when you were writing this, was your intention to have music be so heavily like interwoven into like the writing of it?
I mean, maybe, you know, I think it was by happenstance. I don't even want to say it was like, yeah, this is what, again, I knew I was going to do a soundtrack.
Yeah.
I mean, I think with music being so interwoven, that was just what are the stories I want to tell? Like that's where that started. And then all those things came up. It's like, what do I want to talk about? What do I care about? What really matters to me? Oh, my fandom for Jay-Z, and also recognizing that he's a horrible capitalist.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And it's the same way I know folks are trying to sift through their feelings about Beyonce, myself included.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's recognizing the duality of it all. I mean, really, if we're talking about it's really the plurality, because I mean, there's just so many other things. Like we're more than just two things, actually. And so having to hold space for that. But now I just started writing, Rachel, and like I love hip hop, I love music, and knowing like what speaks to me and what are like the core loves and ideas that I tend to sit with, and like a lot of those involve music.
Yeah.
A lot of those involve hip hop.
I think I'm just curious on like what's been making your heart happy lately, and like what's been like things you've been holding close as value.
This stuff like this. I mean, community. You know, the you know, people ask me about the tour and like why I chose certain cities, and it's like that's where the community is. Like that's why I have people. Like my LA trip was a little bit longer than was planned for because the event was only on the 11th, but I came in on the 9th because I just wanted to see some people. You know, it's just been a beautiful opportunity to just like see people and embrace folks, hug folks, talk to folks, be engaged.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that has kept me grounded the most often. That is the thing that offers me the most amount of love. That's where I get my peace and my joy from. It's like being amongst people I love. You know what I'm saying? That's even strangers. You know what I'm saying? Because I have to remind folks we're in a relationship with everyone. You know, and my profile is growing a bit more. And so because of that, I think that does open up more opportunities for community, which I tend to jump at the chance for, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of stigmas in the mental health community about like what is allowed and what's not allowed. And when you are moving into these spaces of like being soft and vulnerable, do you think the stigmas are not real, but like, do you see them in real time? And do you have to like actively go against them? Or do you see people going against them in a way? Does that make any sense?
I mean, it does. I'm trying to think of like an example.
Yeah.
If you can give me like when you like, can you give me an example of like maybe a stigma you think? Because then I could probably answer that better.
So part of the reason why I wanted you on here was the fact that like it's Father's Day coming up Sunday. So happy Father's Day to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
And a quick side note, do you guys have any Father's Day traditions or anything?
No real Father's Day. I mean, it's funny you say that. I think I just started when I was celebrating my me and my man Tyron. Ty is one of my closest friends, you know. But I was like, yo, we're going to the Tribeca Film Festival on Sunday because my friend Geneva, she has a short film that's that's showing, and I bought him and I tickets, and he was confirming whether or not we were going. I was like, yo, for sure. And I was like, oh, you know what? It'll be cool. What if we just make Father's Day like the day that it's like I called it on the calendar Father's Day. So it's like the two dad, because Ty is also a father.
Yeah.
So like every Father's Day, him and I we're planning on just like kicking it.
Oh.
Cool dad shit. Like that's my man. You know what I'm saying? So, but I mean, that's like, I think that's a new thing. Cause like sometimes what it'll be is like, you know, maybe I just want to go to the movies. That was a tradition, I think, for a little while. Like just taking myself out, just having time for me. Like when we talk about self-care, like I'm very aware of like things that I need. And I can be vocal about those, in a loving way, of course. But
Always.
yeah, you know, new traditions on that.
Okay. So to bring it back to the stigmas of like, what does Black fatherhood look like and how to show up in those spaces? And I know you as a girl dad, and like the magic that is, and like how you support your daughters and like as they get older, as you want to make sure that they see and experience like softness, but also like how they protect themselves on their mental health journeys and like how they like you foster it. So how do you show up in that way? How does like, I know you said fatherhood is like one of the things that made you really become aware of like becoming a better mentally aware person, like what you
Yeah.
need and being there for yourself. But like as you progress in fatherhood and as your children get older and as you get older, like
Mm.
what are you learning about yourself and like things that like you need support with even?
I think what I'm learning is how much my heart can expand if I let it.
Mm,
And I'll just give a quick example. I think I had a worry that I wouldn't be able to love Wes as much as I love Lila. Lila's my 8-year-old, Wes is the 4-year-old. And it's a question I know well enough that a lot of parents, I don't know if every parent, but majority of parents I know go through. It's like you're having a second child and you love this one person so much.
yeah.
I'm very curious as to how that's going to look with another person. I mean, to be fair and transparent, and this might confuse people, but I just folks to walk with me. It's no different than polyamory, right? In
Mm,
that way, in the sense of, oh, there's room for multiple loves to exist, and it's hard to wrap our brains around that sometimes, just because
yeah.
I think what so much of our experience is very much centered around the heteronormative experience in itself. So, but having West affirmed for me the fact that, oh, your heart gets to expand. We have more room for a different kind of love and a different kind of being. We don't have to actually limit that. I mean, capacity is real,
Yeah.
and that's a different conversation. But the idea that my heart is expanding in different ways every day with my children. And it's also too, the thing that I've been learning, and it's less about me, but just more about a thing that I've learned that I've had to remind myself of, is something I learned from my dear friend Ashley Simpo. She had heard this from a therapist, and I say this a lot, but we're not raising children, we're raising adults.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like our children are children for a very short period of time when in comparison to like them being young adults, older. And so having to remind myself of that, like they're not going to be this age forever. And so A, to enjoy it, and B, to also be really intentional about the language, right, that we give them and the love that we give them and the space we give them to figure all these things out on their own too.
Do you, when you became a dad, did you reflect on your relationship with your dad or the father figures in your life and like
That's,
how it, did you
yeah.
have feel more empathy or more like anger towards them or more like, oh, like I get it now or oh, I don't get it. Like,
Empathy, way more empathy. I was angry.
mm,
I was angry. My father specifically, but my father, he didn't have the tools. He didn't have the resources. My father was a decorated Vietnam veteran
mm,
who also suffered from schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. And some of that stuff started with the trauma he was at the on the other end of in the household he grew up in. I didn't know any of this until after my father passed away.
mm,
Um, so my father was doing the best that he could with what he had. And granted, with what he had, and granted, keep in mind, my father passed away after my second child was born. My father never met his grandkids
mm,
on my side. You know what I'm saying? My brother D has kids. I think my father had met them before. I can't remember, but it was just
yeah.
way more grace in recognizing like he really was trying and just couldn't. And I could blame him for it. I could be upset about it. And I was to a certain extent for a period of time, but I got older and I had my first daughter, then I had my second daughter. And I was like, this is hard.
Yeah.
Parenting is hard. And especially parenting in a world that is not very forgiving of Black men. And if you're not making money, it's even harder, because we're expected to produce. And my mother loved my father and she stuck with him for an incredibly long time, probably longer than she should have. But, she loved him and he was just trying to make a way and figure it out. So far be it for me to like judge him for that. I've had my own share of issues, that I speak about in the book, but it's, I'm not better than him. And I think there maybe was a point in time where I probably believed that before I had my girls, and then I had
Mhm.
them, and I was like, oh man, parenting changes you, and if you're not ready for it, if you're not equipped for it, you will drown in it. And the United States of America does not really have enough resources. Not really. There are not enough
None.
resources or tools available to parents in order to be able to cope and manage all of that.
Yeah. Is there, when raising your daughters, do you see moments of yourself in like ways you like how you would parent yourself in a way and like the ways you would be more empathetic towards yourself when like you see it reflected in your children?
I think so. I think I look at my girls and they're just so emotional and emotionally available. in like the best way possible. You know, they get on my nerves, but I mean, they're kids.
Only for a little bit though.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But like,
Yeah.
no, there's a way, there's just the ways that they like we get to communicate with each other, you know, that I just find so special. And I didn't talk to my mom the way I talk to these girls. Granted, I love my mama, but our relationship was just so different, you know. And with these, like, you know, I'm talking a lot about how our day was, and she's telling me. And there's like a real conversation that's happening with this 8-year-old about what they experienced, what they liked, what they didn't like, the things that they worked on. My mom didn't know any of that stuff. My mom knew projects were coming up when I told her. You know what I'm saying? But that was it. It wasn't, my mom helped me with homework. My mom was incredibly important to like all of my formative years growing up. And also too, I can recognize that there were things my mom didn't have the language for either. And so it's a very interesting and beautiful space to feel like I'm in a position to speak with my girls rather in a certain way because I have the language for it. Language that my mom and my father definitely didn't.
Well, I know we're coming up on our time, but there's a few more questions I want to ask. I think more so just like, what would you say is like your hope for men's like future mental health and like how men show up in space, and what can we as women do and like be supportive of that?
I think we're moving toward, and I kind of touched on this, we're moving toward Black men being more honest about our shortcomings. You know, and I say that because I think it can be very hard, and it's the thing. I'll use COVID as an example for folks, and this is not a judgment, but like whether you're a vax or an anti-vax, what I have to tell people and remind folks, like identity is such a strong indicator for how we're going to show up in the world. And you know, if a person decided to show up as an anti-vaxxer, right, and I think if there's anything I learned was that shame and guilt does not move the needle in the ways that we think it does. Like shaming a person and being like, "Oh, you're not doing this," and where are your morals and your principles? They're like, "I don't fucking
So,
know you. I don't care." Like, okay,
X.
I'm gonna, yeah, I'm unmasking right now. Like, whatever, you know. And so it's like, and I say that to say though, like, we'll do this thing where we don't recognize that people are being defensive because we're challenging their ideas about a certain category, a certain way of thinking or being, and doing that in sometimes a public forum, and then expecting people to immediately respond with love to me feels ridiculous. That's not a human, how the human condition works. But I do think, and I say that because again, if we're talking about you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you show up like this, it doesn't prove to be effective because the person would have to be on the other side willing to change prior to you confronting them about said change. If not, they're gonna be like, what, why are you coming at me this way? But I am seeing us becoming more honest and open about where we've fallen, you know. And I don't know, it's never too late. It's the thing I think about, you know, like it's never too late to hold ourselves accountable, you know. And I think that's where we're lacking. You know, I see us more being more privy to how we've harmed others and being like, it was me, I did that,
Yeah.
but not enough. Because it's real work and it's scary work to like kind of hold the mirror up to yourself and be like, okay, what can I do to be better? And what can I do to be better? It has nothing to do with like me getting your number or me getting a promotional raise, but like, no, actually rooted and grounded in the betterment of humanity and society. It's a big ask, but I don't think it's impossible. But ideally, that's where we would be landing.
So our theme for this year is self-discovery
Mm.
and the roles that it plays in our healing journey and like the tools for self-discovery that we use for that. So as I ask everyone, like what and how has self-discovery played a role in your healing, and like what tools do you use for self-discovery?
Mm. Mm. I mean, I'll start with the tools part. Like reading is fundamental. Like Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now and a New Earth, Thich Nhat Hanh, Ram Dass, Tower Brock, Sharon Salzberg, the On Being website, dharmaseed.org, which is like a website for like Buddhist practitioners to like listen to Dharma talks. So and those talks center like mindfulness, gratitude, empathy, things of that nature. But those things led me on the journey. And also I have to shout out Ayana Van Zandt, like her book Spirit of a Man changed my life in a lot of ways. Very old. I mean, not very old, but old enough. So like I say that because when people pick up the book, you're going to see some dated language in there.
Yeah.
But like, this is when we talk about grace. Like, we know what we know when we know it until we know and learn something different and new. And so we have to, the context allows us to hold grace and space for that. But that started the journey for me. And so I'm just curious. So really, I try to be as curious as possible, Rachel, about myself, about my surroundings, about the people I love. My favorite people, and I say this often, my favorite people are the most curious. And that curiosity, and I have to define too and be discerning. I think there's a very stark difference between interrogation and curiosity. Interrogation is questioning for an answer, and curiosity is such a gentle way of probing.
Yeah.
The like what's happening with us, with the people we love in the world around us. Interrogation is a harshness to it. Like you're trying to retrieve information. And the curiosity is just like, I'm asking just because.
Yeah.
And that's been a really big help for me. I think, to be fair, I think that's changed my life. To ask just because and to naturally be curious about people, because people also want to talk and be heard and be seen and feel seen. And that starts with curiosity. And that was a big part of my self-discovery journey, I think, for sure.
Curiosity. Why so curious, Joel? Why so curious?
I can't tell you. I can't help it. I don't know. Couldn't tell you if I tried. It's all right.
Well, you kind of did tell me a little bit.
A little bit. You're right.
Thank you for joining us. Before you leave, please tell everyone where they can find you and how they can support you.
Yeah. Joél Leon with the accent. The accent is not actually there, but people keep calling me Joel, and I'm like, it's not. My name is Joél Leon.
Joel.
Everything and Nothing at Once in booksellers nationwide, bookstores nationwide. Head to Bookshop, head to Barnes and Noble.
It's so good, y'all. Please, it's really good.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's on Audible for folks who want the audiobook. It's me me reading it. I'm on Instagram. I am Joél Leon, very clear and plain as day. Follow me. I sometimes follow back. I actually enjoy follow back. Just for those who don't know, Instagram has a limit on how many people you can actually follow. It's 7,500. That's
really.
I know this because I follow 7,500 people. So.
Oh, dang! I did not know that.
Close. I'm at like 7. Like I got to stop.
So when you hit 7,500, you're just done, or do you start making?
Yeah, you got to unfollow people. You got to unfollow people.
Oh, yikes!
So that's been a thing for me. Just like, hey, I ain't talk to you. Bye.
Okay. Make sure I earn my spot.
Yeah, my DMs are. I got followed. You good? I already followed you. I also know you. Like that's like I know what it feels like to not feel like people see you, and so that's why, for me, following back was like a big thing when I first started. It's like I know what it's like to have 0 followers.
No, to be honest, I was thinking when you followed back, I had this moment of panic because I was like, "Oh my god, I'm not curated like that. It's a very basic, regular Instagram where
it's just me. It's just me letting people know that I see them. Like I don't be on nobody's page.
No,
literally, I be post and go.
There you go, and just keep it moving.
Yeah, I might hit the stories here and there. You know what I'm saying? But I'm posting and I'm just buying hats off Instagram stores because that's how they get you.
We love a good hat. What's this one?
This is actually from the Ace Hotel.
I love in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Friends everywhere. Shout out to Ace Hotel.
So it's way. It's like $40. It's not. I mean, but it's a great hat though. It's comfortable. So, to each his own. But it's one of those things where I was like, let me grab that hat, and then they told me at the register, and I'm like, I'm already at the register, man. I can't be that brother.
I was noticing at the bookstore you were wearing the hat to represent the city. What was that?
Yeah, I did that in LA. I did that in New York, and in other cities it was kind of like but my tour uniform was black on black, black shirt, black pleated pant, black penny loafer, and then a cool hat.
Do you have a stylist? Or is that your style usually?
No, it's all. I mean, it's all me. It's all me. I did this for the tour specifically, but I think I made a decision recently that long sleeve black tees are my infinite go to. It's just a lot. It's the decision fatigue, right?
Yeah, it frees up space in your mind to what you're
one less thing I have to think about, and I have a lot to think about. So I need to free that up.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Love hearing that. We're gonna. All right, Joelle with the accent. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. You're the bomb, girl. Thank you for making time.
You're the best. Thank you. I was so excited. I was like, but
not.
I was really getting jazzed off of it. So I'm really glad we do this. I appreciate you more than you know, truly. All right. Thanks for listening, y'all. Make sure you get Joelle's book, Everything and Nothing at Once.
Yeah. The link is in my bio. And if you Google it, it'll come up.
Just type in Joelle with the accent.
Yeah, Joelle with the accent. Well, actually, please don't type Joelle with the accent. I don't know what you're going to get. You might get, I don't know. I don't want to be responsible for Google AI. You know what I'm saying? But,
watch out. You know, my eyes, y'all.
Yeah, word. My SEO is strong, though. So,
hey, that's Joelle, impressive, though. Strong SEO.
It took a while.
People pay for that.
Yeah, I know. I did not. Fortunately, it's been a lot of years, hard work. Unfortunately, not everyone goes by Joél Leon. So
yeah, it's a great name.
Busy.
You're meant to be.
I'm gonna tell my mom you said that.
Well, let her know.
So we're very thankful to hear that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna end the recording, but thank you guys for listening. Thank you all for joining us for a very special episode of The Unfolding, presented by the Loveland Foundation. At the Loveland Foundation, we are committed to showing up for communities of color in unique and powerful ways, with a particular focus on Black women and girls. Our resources and initiatives are collaborative, and they prioritize opportunity, access, validation, and healing. Since our founding, the Therapy Fund has provided financial support for therapy to over 13,000 Black women, girls, and non-binary individuals across the country. This year, our goal is to provide free therapy to at least 6,000 more. If you'd like to join us and invest in generational change, visit our website at thelovelandfoundation.org for ways to give. To stay updated on new episodes and any future programming, follow us on Instagram and Meta, or check out our website at thelovelandfoundation.org.